Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have an absolutely incredible guest for you guys. We have Dr. Brooke Goldner in the house. She is a legend. She's a certified medical doctor and she healed her autoimmune disease through diet, through supermarket foods. Best-selling author of Goodbye Lupus. She's a legend. She knows so much. And we're going to find out all her secrets today, what she did to heal this. And she's went on to help so many people as well. This is clearly her passion, her life purpose. And I love hearing her story. You guys are going to want to stick around to the end. This is going to be the best one yet. And hello, Dr. Brooke Goldner. How are you today?
Hey there, doing good. How are you?
Amazing. I'm great. So I find you fascinating. I've heard your story so many times, like I said before we got on. And I love how every time you share it with such enthusiasm, I can just tell, I feel like this whole path of yours was meant to be. And the bad times, the health problems were clearly a blessing that have gone on to turn into a story of alchemy into gold. You've turned it into your life purpose and you've helped so many people. And my viewers love you. You're probably one of the, if not the most requested guests. And you know so much. And you're also a certified board certified medical doctor. So let's start with your story. If you could share with everybody what led you down this path. I believe you've been lupus free for 17 years now.
Yes, I have. And thank you so much for that. And it's an honor to me to be requested. I've heard that from so many people, so interviews I've done lately, and it always just strikes me. They're like, they want to hear from me again. So it means a lot to me to be able to do this and to be with you today. Yeah, so we were just talking about this before we started. Like, my story isn't really a story. I mean, it's just been my life, and my life is wild. And when you talk about how it seemed like it was meant to be, it's funny because when I was younger, so I'm a scientist. Before I became a doctor, I was a genetic researcher, and I've always been passionate about science. And I used to say things like, there is no meant to be, there is no the one. Biologically, we could be compatible with many different people. And then I met my husband, and now I am all the way like, there's a meant to be and there's a path. And, it's just because as a scientist, we're taught you have to obey the evidence. And the evidence in my life has just been like, I've been pushed in this direction. And as long as I listen to my heart, things have continued to go in a way that I never could have imagined. So it's just funny when you say that. I'm like, I agree with that now, but my younger self would have been like, there's no such thing. So, as we get older and wiser, we become less sure of what we know, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's like when you hear atheists say they don't believe in the afterlife or God or anything, and then they have those near-death experiences, and they're like, "I totally changed my mind now." So it kind of reminds me of that. But and I love your story of love, your story with your husband. I love it. So maybe we can get into that in a bit too. That would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you asked me how I got to doing this, and this could take the entire interview, so I'll give the shortest version I can. But it is a love story, and it's why I believe in soulmates and fate now, because I don't know that I would be alive today had I not met my husband. So before I was wearing my white coat, I was wearing a patient gown. I was very sick for much of my life. I can't say most of my life anymore, because I've now been healthier longer than I was sick. I just turned 46 2 weeks ago. Very excited about that.
Happy birthday.
But 30 years ago, so I can say that now because I'm 46, 30 years ago, I had a doctor tell me I had 6 months to live.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Gives me goosebumps. Wow.
Me too. I've been thinking about that obsessively because of this birthday, that, oh my God, when I was 16, that's what they were saying. And so I was diagnosed with lupus at 16 after a lot of symptoms that came up over time, starting with migraines a couple of years before, and then rashes, joint pain. And finally, when they all coalesced on the same day, where I'd been out in the sun all day, which I developed a photosensitivity or extreme sensitivity to the sunlight that people with autoimmune get. I'd been out in the sun all day with a friend, came home vomiting from a migraine. The vomiting from the migraine made my rash stand out more, and I was hurting everywhere. My parents looked at me and went, "Whoa, what is going on with you?" And that's when they called my doctor and took me to the ER, and I was diagnosed then. But in the years coming up before the diagnosis, I'd been going to the doctor more and more with just random complaints that I'd never had before. So the migraines first, and they spent, over 6 months doing every test, EEGs and MRIs, and they couldn't find a cause, and went, well, your mom has migraines. It's a family migraine, and you just take this medicine for pain. And I was out for days. It'd usually be 3 days or more of just vomiting from pain from these migraines. They were really severe. And then the joint pain started the year that I was 16. And sometimes I would feel the pain, but it would come and go. And when I'd go to the doctor, it wasn't there, but then it would come back. And then swelling started, and they said, I don't know. I mean, you seem fine otherwise. And so I took something for pain. So it was only really when they all came together that they could diagnose it. And that's very, very common in autoimmune diseases. A lot of the people that I've helped reverse their diseases told me that it took years, sometimes 5 years, one person, 10 years to get a diagnosis. And meanwhile, they're sick.
Yeah.
And they're hurting, and their doctor's going, you're fine. And it's one of my pet peeves. I've made videos about this. Don't ever tell a patient who's sitting in your office that they're fine. They were fine. They'd rather be doing anything else but sitting in your office. I promise you. They don't want to read your old magazines in the waiting room. They don't want to wear the drafty gown. They don't want the blood test, right?
No.
So if they're sitting there and you don't know what's wrong, say, I don't know, but never tell someone who's sitting there with you saying that they're sick, that they're fine. And so, I had great doctors, and it still took them time. And hey, they saved my life. So it's one of the reasons I became a doctor. But it's difficult to diagnose because the symptoms, you can explain them away. I'd started playing volleyball. Maybe that was the joint pain. Although between you and me and whoever's listening, I've mostly sat bench for volleyball. I'm not really athletic.
Yeah, I heard that.
I warmed that bench. But, spiking, oh, maybe that's why that shoulder pain started, right? Or I'm a teenager. Who knows what was going on in my cheek? Like, it's hard to put it together at first. And back then it was more rare in younger people. Nowadays, it's not. I mean, when I got sick, I didn't know anyone who had lupus, but some random cousin's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there was no, and she was old. Whereas now, when I speak to a room of people and I say, does anyone know someone with lupus or autoimmune disease? Everyone raises their hand. It's really been spreading, and we can talk later about why that is. They've done studies on that. But yeah, so it was rare. They didn't think of it. I seemed young. But they finally were able to diagnose us. And at the time, what happened was when they were doing all the tests to confirm that I had lupus, they also discovered that I was in kidney failure, which was silent. I had no symptoms of kidney failure that I was aware of. Yes, my blood pressure was through the roof, but I didn't check that. But when I didn't have, kidneys don't usually hurt or anything. So they looked at my blood test and they went, whoa, and my urine test, they said, no, the kidneys are in trouble. So within a couple of days, I'm getting a kidney biopsy. And then a couple of days after that, I'm in the nephrologist office, who laid it out for us, and said, listen, we don't have the kind of medications right now that can stop this stage of kidney failure, that you have the most aggressive form of kidney failure from lupus. And at this rate of where you are now, within 6 months, your kidneys will fail. And that's when, I was there at the office with my mother and my grandmother. And my mother said, what does that mean? She said, well, in 6 months, she can die. Or if we're lucky, she'll end up on dialysis. Lucky and dialysis don't belong in the same sentence.
Yeah. Facts,
so
yeah.
he goes, now there is an alternative. We could try an experimental treatment. And again, nothing anyone ever wants to hear at a doctor's office. You could die, or how about experimentation? Again, he saved my life. But back then, I mean, this is 30 years ago. We didn't have all the medications we have now. I've lived long enough to be able to say that. But even now, people are dying from lupus at a young age. I mean, the experimental treatment that saved my kidneys is the same one that Selena Gomez had that did not save hers.
Wow.
Right? So the experiment was using chemotherapy. So chemotherapy is traditionally used for cancer, right?
Yep.
So the side effect of chemotherapy is it shuts down your immune system. Your white blood count just tanks, and now you can't fight infections. And it's why people who are in chemotherapy, you see them wearing the masks. Long before COVID, they were wearing masks. Wow. If they get an infection of any kind, they have to go to the hospital because they have no immune systems. They thought, wait a minute. If the immune system is the problem in lupus, right? So in lupus, your immune system's attacking your body. So my immune system is now attacking my kidneys. It's attacking my joints, right? So what if we shut off the immune system on purpose? Then what? Maybe we can stop this. And so I was one of those people they experimented on, and they didn't know how much to give or how long. So while most people nowadays will get it for maybe a month or a few months, I had it for 2 years. So
wow.
2 years of chemotherapy plus 7 different medications orally a day. Yeah.
Crazy.
They had to give me hormone pills to shut down puberty because the chemotherapy can actually cause ovarian failure and also can cause ovarian cancer. If you take chemo, you have a higher chance of getting cancer. It's one of those ironic things. So, there was all these risks plus high dose steroids every day. And so it was 7 pills a day that I would swallow. And then I had chemo once a month, and that was 16 to 18. Wow. And that was the Save Brooke campaign. And it worked. Hey, I'm sitting here. So it obviously worked, but it was definitely excruciating whenever I let my mind focus on it, which was rarely. I do not like to focus on what's wrong. I was trained from a young age in a very trauma resilient family to focus on what you have. And I was just telling my mom about this the other night. I'm lucky enough that we finally convinced my mom to move in with us. The kids are happy. We're happy. She delivers green smoothies to my office while I'm working.
Amazing.
Oh, so amazing. But we were just chatting about this and saying, you know, we have amazing trauma resilience in our family. It's why I'm a trauma specialist, actually, is not because I'm traumatized, because I'm not. Right.
Yeah.
And so my mother's parents are Holocaust survivors. And so I was raised by them in addition, you know, with my parents were working. My grandparents took care of me. And they weren't traumatized by the Holocaust, which to my mind, to this day blows my mind.
Wow.
That they were positive, happy people. They were.
Wow.
If you ask them about their life, you ask my grandmother to her dying day, she lived in 99, she would say, I'm a lucky girl. Who says that? That's a Holocaust survivor, right?
We're going to have to get into some of your family secrets in this interview too, with how to
I
stay
have
positive,
a lot of them.
how to stay positive and not let trauma derail your life completely, because
you can experience trauma without being traumatized. And that's what trauma resilience is. And my family has it powerfully. And my grandmother's a great case study because the things I teach people have medical terms, but she instinctively did it. And I can tell you amazing stories about them. But for her, you know, she was such an amazing force of nature in my life. I mean, the only time I've ever seen her cry was the day that I got that diagnosis from the nephrologist. That night, you know, I've told the story before, but it's like, it affected me more than what the doctor said. But the doctor said, it barely, you know, it registered. I was 16, right? But seeing my grandmother on the floor, on her knees, crying to God, asking him to take her instead and spare me, burned into me forever. You know, she didn't cry like that when my grandfather died. Like,
wow.
But I was, you know, I'm first born in America. My mom was born in Poland after the war. And so I was like, gonna live the American dream. And then there I was on chemotherapy, right? So, but she and my mother, they raised me that, listen, lupus is not who you are, it's what you have. But you know what? Everyone has problems. So you take your pills, you get your chemo, you got to graduate high school, you got to graduate college, you got stuff to do. I'm Jewish, you know, I was like, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a something. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
They just wanted me to live, right?
Yeah.
But there was no question of maybe you should take time off school or anything. It's like, no, listen, you're still lucky. And I felt lucky. I was born in America. I wasn't persecuted. I had doctors, I had a beautiful home. I had my family around them. That's not what my grandparents had, you know, they
What
were
an attitude.
Nazis.
What a great attitude. I have so much admiration for you and your family with this.
Yeah. So that's what kept me going though. So my mom and I would figure out like, okay, I have chemotherapy on Friday, but I have an AP exam on Monday. So I'm going to have to really work on my schedule to make sure I get my studying in, because after chemo, I'm always out for days throwing up. So it'd be like, all right, how do we work this? So that's how it was, very like practical on how to schedule my sick days and my test days and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I focused on, was what I could do and what I had. And I still graduated in the top 10 of my class. I got a scholarship to my first choice of college, Carnegie Mellon. I had my last chemo a week before I started college. Yeah, and was told I was in remission after that. That the remission meaning I still had lupus and my blood test showed I still had lupus, but my kidneys were stable. So I still had protein loss in my urine, which is a symptom of kidney problems. And they said that'll be forever. Your kidney was damaged. I still had some lab markers where you could see there was, you know, it wasn't quite right, but it was stable. Remission in autoimmune disease is you're not currently dying from autoimmune disease. And I was like, I'll take it.
And they say lupus can't be cured, right? At that point, they were saying it. You'll have it forever, right?
I mean, they still say it. Like Western medicine considers autoimmune disease to be incurable. And that's why I don't use the word cure, because I don't want to argue with people.
No.
I don't have time for that. But you can't argue reversible, because if I had it and then you reversed it, that's reversible, right? But it wasn't reversed then, because I still had lupus, my markers still had it. I took pills every day, but pills alone without chemo was, to me, complete freedom. And I loved college. I developed an attitude of, you might notice I'm like, I'm intense about life and about experience. And I think part of it is, you know, when you're told at 16 that you might have 6 months to live, every day is like, I got to do something. I got to make it happen. I got to, you know, I want to experience joy every day. I want to do something that matters every day. So even if I had pain, I could take a medicine for pain. Fine. You know, if I had a migraine, I had medicines for migraines. I had pills everywhere. But I also had this, like, so every day, like walking to campus, Carnegie Mellon is gorgeous. And I'd be like, oh my God, I'm here. I can't believe I'm here every day for 4 years.
Wow.
Oh, this is a beautiful place. I love this place. Everyone else is complaining about how hard the tests are. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is
Wow.
a famous scientist who's teaching me. Like, I want to learn from him. Like, I was ridiculous. And I still am like that. I'm excited about life.
I love
and
it.
So even when they told us, like, you can't do genetic research until you're at least a junior, summer after freshman year, I stayed at college, and every day I was knocking on all the labs. Can I do research here? Can I do research here? And they'd say, you have to wait till you're a junior. I'm like, who knows what's going to happen by then? Can I do research here? Can I do research? And finally, one guy let me in, and I started research the summer after my freshman year. Graduated with honors because of the genetic research I did with him and leukemia and eye development. And but it was just, I was just kind of an unstoppable force, I guess. I just kept showing up until someone's like, all right, just let her in, and give her a microscope. Let's let her do something. And so I've always just been that way. Like, I want to get everything out of the experiences. I've loved with my full heart. I know a lot of folks with disease who feel afraid to let people love them. And I help them with that. Like, oh, because something might happen to me. I'm like, let people choose who they love. You want to love me? Sure. Come on in. Let's do this, And so that's always been, I wanted to learn everything I could. I always stayed after class. I always went in for every, help session, not because I needed help, but just in case I got extra information. Everybody hated organic chemistry. I loved organic chemistry. It was the coolest thing, picturing molecules. I wrote poetry about organic chemistry.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just,
I love it.
So for me, it's been a positive impact that even though, listen, I had a lot of pain and problems, it fueled me, and it still does, even though, like, as you said, I've been healthy 17 years. Listen, I can't even talk about it without being in tears. Like, why do I bother with eye makeup? Like, shouldn't even,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And I love being here. Like, I love being here with you. I just love waking up every day, even at 46. It's like, still doing it,
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that changed my life was falling in love with my husband, because even then I don't even know if you could call it a remission at that time. I guess so, because right before I met him, I had a lupus relapse. Medical school, not the best place for autoimmune disease. I was usually sicker than every patient I was seeing.
Wow. Crazy,
your
right?
complaints, and I'm like, I got that. But, I didn't tell them that. But it was very hard because in medical school, they do not care what you have. You need to be on call. You need to work these hours. You need to get to the hospital before the residents and do your rounding, and you got to stay late and do all the grunt work. And at one point I realized it's so funny to me when I have to say, like, back in my day, they didn't have the laws they have now that limits how long you can work as a resident or a med student. So I was working, I remember one week I realized I was working 100 hours a week.
Wow. Crazy.
With lupus. So
unreal. Wow.
Yeah. So I got sick, and the lupus came, it was there, but I had a relapse where it wasn't the kidneys. The kidneys were still stable, but I developed antibodies called antiphospholipid antibodies that attack your blood, and it was causing blood clots. So I had a bunch of mini strokes. I was getting like double vision while I was rounding in the hospital. I collapsed one day. I mean, so it was,
terrifying.
Like, oh yeah. While I'm trying to take care of people in the family clinic, I collapsed on one of the charts. And
wow.
that was bad. Yeah. And so that was probably the scariest relapse I had, because I'd always known that I had a serious disease where, especially how young I was when it started, they made me understand that, you'll probably become disabled. You won't ever be able to have children. I wasn't going to live as long of a life. And especially going to medical school, I now really knew, because when I was 16, there was no Google. We had no internet. There was no internet when I was a teenager. My older son calls it the dark ages because we had no Wi-Fi. But there was no internet.
Yeah,
so, but being a med student, I knew very clearly what I had. So this was the first time I'd gotten really sick while having the medical knowledge to know how serious it was. And they told me I had to inject myself with blood thinners for the rest of my life so that I wouldn't have a major stroke. But don't hit your head or go in a car accident, because then you can bleed into your brain, So
are mini strokes, are they a common side effect of autoimmune disorders or of lupus?
So it's not a side effect, but with lupus, it's fairly common in autoimmune disease. So with autoimmune diseases, the biggest difference between them is really what parts of the body gets affected, right? So basically a part of your immune system, which is supposed to be attacking bacteria, viruses, things like that, starts attacking parts of your own body. So if it's in your nervous system, you call that MS, right? If it's affecting mostly your joints, then it would be rheumatoid arthritis, right? Scleroderma, hardening of the skin, Sjogren's, you're drying out your mucous membranes, your eyes, your mouth, right? Lupus, anywhere, anything. Lupus basically is one of those diseases that can affect any organ of your body. And so one of the things that you can see is these antibodies that cause blood clots. And a lot of times the way it's actually diagnosed is in women who are trying to get pregnant and have repeated miscarriages.
Wow.
So if you have blood clots, it can cause clotting of the placenta. And so I actually just started working with someone where that was how she was diagnosed, was just repeated miscarriages, and nobody ran the tests. And so she went through so many horrible, it's emotionally devastating to have these miscarriages, until someone finally ran the tests and went, oh, you have this antibody, you need to be on a blood thinner. That's why. So for some women, that's how they're diagnosed, and it might be their only symptom.
Okay.
But for me, it was not only did I have it, but it was really serious. So a mini stroke means that you have a blood clot, and it goes into your brain, but it dissolves or passes through before it causes permanent damage. So with a major stroke, the blood clot gets stuck, and then it causes death of the tissues that needed to get that blood supply. So it's blocking blood supply to the brain, and then those tissues die. So I was lucky enough. I'm lucky that even though I experienced them and I would get double vision, and I had this episode that I did, that they passed through and there was no permanent damage or serious damage. But it's a terrifying thing to go through. And I knew once it was diagnosed, I was like, wow, okay. So at some point now, I could actually have a major stroke or pulmonary embolism. So my death felt a lot more close at hand than ever before, really, because especially I could appreciate it in a way that I hadn't when I was younger. When I was younger, you just take your medicines, do what your doctors say. That I was raised by an immigrant family, you just do what your doctor says. But as a medical student, it was pretty scary. But that's also, so I was just stabilized on my blood thinners and everything. And I met my husband shortly after, and he met me already. I was like, all right, I cried about it. I'm still here. I just gotten my first choice of residency at UCLA at Harbor in California. And it was like, I am the luckiest person ever who actually gets to live their dream. Like, I've been dreaming of this since I was a teenager, and here I am. So injections or not, I'm still super lucky. And that was the mindset I was in really when I met my husband.
Wow. Amazing. And he totally changed your life.
Oh my God. In so many ways. Yeah, he's amazing. Like, I was just, this morning, we got to wake up at the same time, and it's just like, still to this day. So we got married in 2005, so 17 years. And we just we're so grateful for each other, and we tell each other every day. Like, we look at each other, we look at each other and then we cry, and it's been that long. So he's amazing. But anyway, back in 2004, when we met, it was just like our hearts and souls just immediately, we just knew. And that was another thing I used to tell people: know someone before you get married. You don't know a person. Yeah, a month after we met, we were talking about marriage. So, all things that I thought I knew went out the window. But at that point, he didn't really know what I had. Like, he knew that I took medicine, but I didn't talk about it, not because I was hiding it, but I didn't like to focus on being sick. And so most people never knew I was in pain. Most people never knew I was sick. I was actually talking to a friend from high school, and she's like, I actually knew you told me that about the chemo. And I didn't even remember who I told, because I usually didn't tell anyone, but nobody really knew when I felt that. I still showed up. Or if I didn't show up, it's because I couldn't get out of bed that day. I didn't complain, So even with him, he knew me as this, happy person. And I had to sit him down when he was talking about marriage. And I did have to say, listen, I'd love to marry you, but you need to understand, I can't have children. I'm going to become disabled. You're going to have to take care of me when I become disabled. And I'm still going to die pretty young. Like, this is what you're signing up for, And that was a scary thing to have to tell someone, because, I adored him. But he just, he'd blinked, and then he just said, you know what, I'd rather live a short life with you than a lifetime with anybody else. We'll just make it the best life you could ever have. And I went, okay.
Wow.
That was it. That was the discussion. Yeah. What I didn't know is that he was he had the magic that would change everything. And sometimes people say maybe love cured you. I can say we tested that, because for the first 6 months, I was in love, but did not change my diet or anything else. And I still had lupus the same way. And I knew that because I always got tested every month, because I scared doctors. I was a scary patient, from 16 I was constantly in a state of like, I'm okay, I'm dying, you know. I was like, no. So they were always scared of me. So they got in the habit of every month testing all my antibodies. And it's funny because now when I work with patients, sometimes I have to fight to get antibody tests. And I'm testing it because I'm watching the antibodies go away.
Wow.
You know, but a lot of doctors will say, we don't need to test them. Once you're diagnosed, you have it forever. No need to test. But my doctors test me every month because they needed to know, like, where is she? How's her kidney? Was she clotting? What's she doing? You know, so I was always tested. And what's funny is when I changed my diet, so the reason I did it, my husband has his own best-selling book called Miracle Metabolism, and his research has been on trying to understand the optimal way for humans to eat, to have a good metabolism. Metabolism at the time, meaning all people should be able to burn fat or build muscle, right? It shouldn't be that some people just can't build muscle or they can't lose weight. Like, there must be a problem with the diet. And even when he was getting his master's degree and he's getting, you know, PhD professors in nutrition biology, and you go, what is the optimal diet for humans? And they didn't know. And he's like, what? You know, because they'd say maybe some people are high fat, high carb, low carb, da, da, da. And he's like, this isn't science, guys. Sorry. Like, we know what giraffes eat. We know what lions eat. We know what koala bears eat. You're saying we don't know what humans are supposed to eat. Humans are somehow diverse. Come on, we're a species. So he couldn't take it. So he took to studying cellular biology and the impact of nutrition on fat loss and muscle gain so that he could figure it out. Because he's got that kind of mind. He was originally a computer science guy at Carnegie Mellon and mathematics. And for him, if you've got the right equation, you get the right answer. There's no variation in math or computer science. You put the right input, you get the right output. And then he got into biology and went, what is this? This is a mess. So, and in medical school, I didn't get trained in nutrition. They taught me, like, if you have heart disease, tell them not to eat butter or beef. And if they have diabetes, no sugar. That's it. We got nothing. And then for weight loss, just eat less calories than you burn.
Crazy. And it's still like that, right? Is it still like that pretty much?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Although I just taught at, when was that? That was Friday, I think. No, but it was last week. I think it was last. I do a lot of teaching. I think it was last Wednesday. Last Wednesday, I taught 3 different medical schools over Zoom. It was really fun. So that was really neat. So it's changing. The younger generation is changing, but currently out there, yes, you never listen to a doctor who tells you what to eat. And I know it's funny for me to say that, but they don't know. They have no idea. I actually just had someone in my rapid recovery group who just reversed her blood sugar issues for diabetes within 6 weeks. Her cholesterol, everything is gorgeous, right? And she said that her doctor told her to go keto to fix her cholesterol. And she's like, I've been listening to this other doctor who's, I'm going to listen to her. And she's challenging him to a glucose tolerance test to prove that he's actually insulin resistant and she isn't, because I taught her about this. But yeah, you know, we don't know. Doctors, everything that I know about nutrition, my medical and scientific training is why I can understand it and teach it well. People always say when I teach it, it's understandable because I understand the science, right? But in terms of the application of the science, that I learned really from my husband and his incredible work, which was, you know, nothing that I was taught in medical training. But so his obsession ended up saving my life because, you know, he was already famous at the time for being a fat loss expert. You know, he would get called to work for MTV at the time, which MTV was cool. I don't even know if it's a thing anymore, but back then.
I don't think so, really, but it was huge. I don't know, maybe it is, but it was huge back then. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. When I was growing up, like, if I liked a song, I would watch MTV all day waiting for that song to come on.
I love it.
Like, come on, Green Day, come on, Green Day. Like, just waiting for it, right? And so my husband was actually, he was MTV's hottest body at the beach house in 2003.
No way.
You know, when they used to do like the Hamptons.
Yeah. I used to do, I don't know if you watch The Hills. I used to do The Hills after show. That's great. I should have your husband on too. He sounds like he's so
amazing.
Wow.
But it was so funny. So after he was on there, they started like having him come out, you know, somebody needs to do a music video and they put on some beer weight and he'd come in 3 weeks, 6-pack, you know? So when I met him, he had abs like on his teeth. I don't know. The man had abs like around, you know, it was crazy. So he'd been experimenting on himself and then he would experiment on his clients. And to have a real scientist who's your personal trainer, there's nothing like it. You know, it was funny because even back then when I'd say my husband's a personal trainer, they would just assume things, you know, and then they speak to him, they go, wow, he's a really smart guy. He's really intense. I said, yeah, he's got a master's degree. He went to Carnegie Mellon. Like he's he's a scientist, but putting his brain into nutrition and into fitness, it's incredible. So I said, well, if we're going to get married, I want to look like an MTV star. Plus, I was going from Pittsburgh to LA. I did not have an LA body.
Yeah.
All right. I was Pittsburgh hot, but no, I was LA fat. And it was just the reality. It was the reality. I don't want to offend anyone, but it's the truth.
You're such a relatable doctor. I love it. It's like, you're just so real and awesome.
Well, the white coat will hide a lot, and the best diet to be on if you want to be sick and fat at hospital food. Yeah. When I used to get a salad at the hospital in Pittsburgh where I was training, they would put French fries and ranch dressing on the salad.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, what are these French fries for? They're like at the salad bar. They're like, you put it on the salad and then you put the ranch. And I'm like, huh, okay, yeah. That's different. So it was very difficult to be healthy then. And I was a vegetarian at the time, but I had high cholesterol. Obviously I had lupus, I had blood clots, and I didn't even know it was related to my diet because I wasn't taught it, just, eat away. So purely vanity that I changed my diet. I did not, I've had so many interviewers ask me like, how did you have that brilliant insight that there was a better way to eat to heal yourself? I'm like, I didn't have any brilliant insights. I just was vain enough that I wanted to lose weight for my wedding like anybody else. And my husband was an expert in getting people fit in record time, and I used it. And that was it, except I wanted to be healthy, and I knew he would. Like I had a friend who didn't eat for 2 weeks for her wedding, and then gained 20 pounds on her honeymoon. I wanted to do it this scientific way. And he didn't even want to train me at first. I love this man. He's like, it feels like a trap. You're beautiful. You don't need to change. I'm like, I love you for saying that, but I'd like to lose some weight. And he's like, okay, I just wanted you to know that I don't think you, I'm like, you're fine, babe. It's okay. I'm scared, to say that. So he changed my diet to the first iteration of what became our protocol. And he'd never trained a vegetarian before. I think I was the only vegetarian in Pittsburgh. And so I wouldn't eat meat. At the time, he still thought was necessary. He's ruled that out now and found that you can actually build muscle faster on half the protein on a plant-based diet than a meat-based diet. His research is awesome. But at the time, he thought it was necessary, but like free range. So basically, it was a lot like what paleo is now, but before anybody used that term because it was a while ago. But it was super high in vegetables, raw vegetables, omega-3, water intake, all the stuff that we teach. And so he had to change it for me because I wouldn't eat the meat. He's like, I don't know, soybeans, tofu, So I did his thing and it worked. Within 3 months, I went from a size 11 to a size 3 and I was ripped. I mean, it was great. I was like, never looked like that in my whole life. Never thought I could. This was the only time there was a break in my labs, which is kind of sad. But my rheumatologist I'd gotten in California retired. And then I got a new doctor, and I got the new doctor right around that time when I was getting ready to leave for my wedding. So anyway, I go to see the new doctor and I'm like, I feel really good. I'm an intern now, working 30-hour shifts multiple days a week. And I have so much energy. I'm like super fit. I have no aches and pains. I have no migraines. I have never felt that good in my life. Like, wow. Before I got sick, I don't think I ever was that. Yeah. Like, just, like I could work a 30-hour shift and then go to the gym. People without lupus do not do that. People with lupus definitely shouldn't, but I just felt good, like really good. So I get my labs done, and I'll never forget going to my first appointment. I'd gotten the labs done and then I went to the appointment, and he came in with a medical student. He said, this is Dr. Goldner. She alleges to have lupus. I'm like, what the hell? Right? He goes, but these labs don't appear to show any. So my guess is that that there was a mistake at the lab, because I've seen your chart. Wow. There is no lupus here. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, there's no lupus. Like, look at this. And I looked, all the lupus antibodies are negative. The complement markers, everything, even my kidneys were normal, no protein in my urine. I'm like, definitely not my labs. Like at that point, I've been sick for 12 years. Yeah. They're like, those are not my labs. I wish they were my labs. I would frame them if they were my labs, but that's not my labs. Yeah. Well, he goes, enjoy your wedding, come back. And a month later I come back, we retest it. Well, we weren't gone for a month. We were gone for a couple of weeks, but a month later I come back, and my labs looked even better than the previous ones. And my blood clot antibodies, which in the previous labs only said like borderline, which still was not my labs, right? It was still too good. Now they were completely negative. Everything else was still negative. They rechecked my cholesterol. It was like 168. So I was like, what is this magic here? So the funny thing about the whole thing is I didn't even realize I didn't have lupus anymore because I was a medical doctor who'd been sick for 12 years and I was trained that I had an incurable disease. So even though all my markers were negative, I kept taking medicine for a year, injecting myself with blood thinners for a year because it was because even though you couldn't see it, I still had it, right? You don't have it for 12 years and then it's just not there. And I remember after a year, I asked my doctor, why am I still injecting myself every day? We can see I don't have blood clot antibodies. And he told me, you're treating my anxiety because I'm terrified to stop it.
Wow.
I told you, I scared doctors. I was like, well, I appreciate that, but I don't want to be covered in bruises from being on blood thinners if I don't need it. So I said, I don't want to die. So the moment I have a symptom that's a problem or a blood test that looks bad, I'll be right back in the chair. We restart meds. But if I don't need them, I don't want to be on them. And even then, I still didn't think of myself as I used to have lupus. It wasn't until I decided to get pregnant 4 years after going into remission, whatever you want to call this. When I went to see my OBGYN pregnant, she's like, medical history? I'm like, I used to have lupus. And then she freaked out. She's like, you don't used to have lupus. You have lupus and you're pregnant. And then she's running all the tests, couldn't find it, sent me to high-risk OB. And they're like, she's healthy, sent me back and had healthy pregnancy, healthy baby. And that's when my husband and I finally realized I didn't have lupus. Because during my whole pregnancy, they're like, if you don't get a relapse during the pregnancy, as soon as you give birth, it's all going to hell. Baby's going home, you're going to the ICU kind of drama. Didn't happen. I had a C-section because Solomon was butt first and he wasn't moving. If you knew him, you'd get it, So so I had a C-section. Same day, I felt great. I'm like, send a fruit platter in and, let me get a shower. I'm good. And I had enough milk to like raise a chubby baby and donate to other families. And this is when we locked it in, was 9 days after I gave birth, I was fitting in my pre-pregnancy genes.
Incredible.
So my husband did a photo shoot because at the time he had the largest boot camps in Orange County. And he's like, this is going to be good for business here because we got women in this boot camp trying to lose their baby weight and their kids are in college. And you're 9 days after birth and like full circle pictures felt fun. But to me, that was cool. We proved his metabolism theory. But that's when we finally realized that maybe metabolism is not just about how well you lose body fat or gain muscle, but maybe it's about how well your cells respond to what your body needs in real time. And so if you're sick, it can heal, right? That if you're pregnant, you can get pregnant. And when you have a baby, you can make milk. Like your body does what it's supposed to do as you ask it to do rapidly, rather than it just being about the size of your body or your fat content. And it was after we had our son and I did not relapse and I felt amazing that we started to research it. And it was only then after we started looking at what is the nutritional impact on cells, not just for fat loss or muscle building, but the impact on recovery, on immune function. And so that's why we have a protocol. It's kind of different than a lot of folks who say, like, eat more plants. Yes, definitely. But we have a very specific protocol because we didn't even know that there was a plant-based movement. We just started to look at there must be something we did and how would that work scientifically? And then we started testing it for free. And only when we had tested it on people and had 100% of the people we had tested it on get that positive result of reversal, did we actually bring it to the public. And I published Goodbye Lupus. And I also released it to the public for free because him and I really decided that, this is not something that you just ride off into the sunset with. But there's, I always say we have to save lives. And he said, we have to save wives.
Wow. Amazing.
That's been our mission ever since. Yeah, that's been our mission.
Well, I want to find out what you guys did in a minute, like the protocol, what way you were eating. I think it's amazing. And did you reverse everything? Like everything reversed pretty much?
Everything.
Wow.
Yeah, not even a pretty much everything. So I in 17 years now, I have never had a relapse. I do not have arthritis. I do not get rashes. I do not have any signs or symptoms of autoimmune disease. My labs have been perfect. I get them done usually once a year. I'll order them for myself just to check, see what's going on. During the pandemic, I took a break from going places a bit, so I didn't. But I just rechecked recently. Still no lupus, and I've had two beautiful children with no relapses. My son Alex is 10, and my son Solomon's 14, and they're brilliant, amazing children that have been raised on the same nutrition plan that saved my life. Because I figured they have my genetics, and they also have. My husband's a healthy guy, but all the men in his family get heart disease. They have colon cancer, Parkinson's. I mean, so it's not like, it's just me that brought some genes that needed some chlorine, in the gene pool. But like in general, most families have things that you bring to the table, right? And so they've always eaten this way their whole lives, and they are incredible. I know I'm a mom, and all moms say that, but I mean, they are both brilliant, gifted kids that just have excelled in so many areas. It's really cool to see what's possible when you start off that way. When you start off well.
Where do you think you'd be if you didn't meet your husband?
I don't know. Underground? I don't know.
Right? Who knows,
maybe.
right?
I mean, I'm 46, so being diagnosed with lupus at 16, I definitely wasn't expected to have a lot of time. In fact, when I went back to Pennsylvania with my kids. How long ago was this now? Oh my goodness, maybe 7 years ago. And I went to see my nephrologist, the one who told me I had 6 months to live. And he was fantastic. He came up with the experimental treatment. Hey, it worked.
Yeah.
And so I went to see him. Dr. Levy, he is now the medical director at Doylestown Hospital, where he was the young upstart nephrologist back when I first got there. And so I saw him, and he came out and he was crying. He hugged me and he was crying. He goes, "I didn't think you were still alive." He's like, "I couldn't believe it. When they said you were here, I had to go and like look at your old chart." And he's like, "I can't believe that's her. There's no way." And then he saw my kids and he was just like, he couldn't believe it. But I got to tell you, this was funny. And I love you, Dr. Levy, if you're watching this. But so I told him everything, told him the whole story and what happened and what we did and how it worked. And he was just so happy, crying. And then as we're leaving, there was a candy bowl, and my Alex was like 2 or 3. And he like pointed to it and he's like, "Can I have that?" And I said, No, we don't eat that. And Dr. Levy, he goes, "I don't know. I still think when it comes to food, moderation is best." And I almost walked into the door. I was like, because he's the same doctor who told me when I was a kid that pizza was the perfect food because it had all the food groups. So, so even witnessing the miracle, there's a part of his brain that's stuck, and hey, doctors are food addicted too. So it's hard sometimes for them to really think like, I'm putting people on dialysis, sending them for kidney transplants, and you're telling me kale did it? It's a lot to take in sometimes. Yeah.
And you know what? Some people do say disease can manifest from like trauma in our body and hard times and things like that. But it doesn't seem like you had that. It seems like you've always been very positive and happy. And this disease manifested anyway. What do you think caused all of these health problems? Do you think it's specific foods or processed foods? Like, is there anything in particular that you think led to all this? Yeah.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point. And it's part of what I teach, actually. Anyone who watches my social media, you see a lot of it is about mindset and emotion and stress and sleep and all those things, because your state of your current health is really a result of your habits around food, your thinking, your moods, your self-care, your sleep, right? All of those things impact the health of your body. Now, nutrition is really essential because your cells are made of your food. So if your food is junk, then even if you're a happy person like me, you're still going to get sick. Trauma is really a big one. It's interesting because they have done studies showing that people with trauma have much higher rates of autoimmune disease. There was one study they did at a hospital where they were just looking at hospitalized people with autoimmune disease, and they surveyed them. How many of you have had past childhood trauma? And it was over 60%, which is a lot higher than the general population, right? Or that we know of. In my rapid recovery groups, where I see people every day for 6 weeks, that's where all my amazing results come from, because every day I'm on them. What did you eat and how did you sleep? And your self-care. And you know what? Don't talk to yourself like that. Let's change this conversation. Let's work on forgiveness. So I really kind of transform all the areas of their life to heal as quickly as possible. And that's in that group. I've got to say, probably 90% of them have serious trauma histories. That's not typical, when you think about it, like how are so many? So it's a big part. And there is some research done that shows that trauma can get passed down genetically. Wow. So while I personally didn't experience traumatic things, my grandmother did. And this is a really cool fact, actually. I love this. So do you know that every egg that you'll ever have in your lifetime, you're born with it? It's formed when you're in the womb. Which means that when my mother was being carried by my grandmother, I was there too, because the egg that became me was in my mother's ovaries while she was in my grandmother's belly. So my grandmother literally carried me.
Wow.
Right?
What a way to look at it. Wow.
Yeah. And I actually, to this day, she was my favorite person. She just died recently, 99. She not only lived to see me heal, but lived to see me become a doctor, to become a mother. She became a great grandmother twice, like taught both my babies to walk. Amazing. So I like to know that she
still seeing you now, I feel like too. She's still seeing you now. Wow.
But she held me, which is kind of cool, right? But, they've shown that there is an effect in the mitochondrial DNA in the women that's passed down in their eggs that would have gone into my mother, which could have gone into me as well. So there is a genetic impact of trauma. So it's possible. The Holocaust is in me.
Wow. Yeah. That's fascinating to me. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So that's a whole branch of medicine, actually, where they're studying that now. But so there's that impact. When I was 14, both of my grandfathers died. So there was some, you know, and they've actually done a study too, where they looked at how people who are in mourning, their inflammatory markers are through the roof, like somebody with autoimmune disease. So there's a lot of folks I see who first got sick when they were in mourning over a divorce, over a loss of someone who died, right? That over a big move from another country. So being in mourning is inflammatory. So there's just so many impacts. So yes, while I was not someone who was depressed, anxious, traumatized person, there was an impact on my life for sure. But for me, the food was the biggest part, because I was first born in America, first born on the American diet. My mom's doctors told her if she wanted to lose weight by going back to smoking, that breast milk, don't give it to me, give me the processed formula. So I was the first one to get formula fed. And my favorite foods were macaroni and cheese and Chef Boyardee, right? That was the first line of my book of Lupus, is I got to grow up with my own personal chef, Chef Boyardee, you know. And it's funny because I thought everybody would get that reference. Every once in a while, someone's like, you know, so especially I treat people internationally, and every once in a while, someone's like, you had a chef? I'm like, no, it's processed canned foods, like $1 a can. Yeah. No chef. So my food intake, and because I was a skinny kid, it was kind of the belief that if you're skinny, you can eat whatever you want.
Yeah, me too. It was the same sort of thing for me. Yeah.
I was just talking about my husband yesterday. We were driving back from my son Solomon is a speed cuber. He can solve like a 2x2 cube in 5 seconds. He can solve a 3x3 in 23 seconds was his average yesterday. I mean, like, he's a brilliant kid, right? So he was at his competition. And so we were driving back, and when we love driving long distances because we just chat, we just blah, 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 blah. We always have something to talk about. And I was saying, you know, it's weird. We started talking about our favorite foods as kids. I don't know how we got on the topic, and we're talking about what cereals we ate, you know, and we love the chocolate cereals. And I used to do like the chocolate powdered drink, and then Pop-Tarts.
Me too. Yeah, Pop-Tarts, dips, Lucky Charms, all that.
Yeah, he loved Lucky Charms. Yeah, that was his. I like the one, I couldn't think of the name of it, the one with the cookies, right? And that was our breakfast, right? And then my parents at the time owned pizza stores, right? Yeah. So my parents owned the pizza shops. So they would serve pizza at the school. So that was my family's business, right? And then they'd be so tired at night, they'd just bring home pizza for dinner. So I thought I was lucky, because, like, you know, what teenager doesn't want to eat pizza every day? So I'd have my junky cereal, and then I'd go to school, and my breakfast in high school, this is so sad. My breakfast in high school was 2 slices of pizza, French fries, and ice cream.
Oh, wow.
Every day. Yeah. And then I'd have usually pizza for dinner. And listen, my parents are hard workers. I actually worked in their pizza shops all the way through medical school. I ran the shop every summer. I came home every Friday and Saturday to make pies for the store. It was a family business, you know? And so it was just, but that was my diet at the same, my Tommy's like, well, you didn't know back then, but it sure makes sense that was a lupus diet, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, so many people don't, even now, so many people like didn't back then, or even now, connect that what we put in us has an effect on like what comes out and what happens, right? So these foods clearly led to the health problems. And I'd love to hear the protocol, what you did to clear it up, and how you're eating now.
Yeah. So isn't it comical now looking back how we could go, oh my God, how were you even alive eating that way? That's what I wonder. And I teach my kids this, that the human body is both extremely fragile and extremely resilient at the same time, right? That yes, I was in kidney failure by 16, but how was I even alive? Like, how was I eating this processed junk and still waking up every day and able to think and able to do all the things I did? It's amazing. The human body, I said, I've written poetry around it. It was my minor in college was creative writing and poetry. There's nothing more poetic than biology, in my opinion, but it is incredible. We are fragile and we're resilient. And what I found is, even when we poison ourselves for much of our lives from babyhood, our cells have the information inside them to function normally. The DNA is there to function normally. We just need to give it the supplies, right? It's like if you had the Lego instructions, but no Legos. You know what to do. You're not going to build the castle because you don't have the Legos. Or if you only have the yellow pieces, but you're missing the clear pieces and blue pieces. Solomon was building the 1,000-piece sets by 5 years old. The tears when he couldn't find one piece, oh my God. And I go, just use this one. It's not the right one. It will work. And it just, so, but our body's like that. Listen, I want to give you a really healthy immune system, but we're missing the yellow piece. Where's the yellow piece? Oh, well, I guess we'll just not work, right? So that's the good news. And I found this, I've now worked with thousands of people. Over 1,000 people have done rapid recovery alone, where I work with them every day. So the data I have now is just, it's beyond anything that even most clinicians could hope for, because who works with people every day, right? My husband and I do that because we really want to see people get better. I always tell people, I'm not trying to be busier. I would love to have weekends off, but I know I need to hold people's hand through that first part to get past the food addictions, to get their results, and then I can set them free to go take care of themselves, right? So yeah, so the protocol has evolved over time too, and that's what I think is also really important. I know a lot of folks who've been teaching stuff, maybe they wrote a book like in the early 2000s, and they're still saying exactly the same thing. And I'm like, we've got to evolve. Like, you haven't had any change. You're not embracing new data. Like, we proved avocados are healthy, but some people still say they're not. I'm like, no, there's studies, right? Like, we know, right? So we have to evolve. And so I'm very, very committed to people's health more than I am to being right. If I learned something better than what I was doing before, then I start doing it that way, because the results are what matter most. And that's what my husband and I are known for, is we're results oriented. We don't read something and go, oh, let's act on it. No. If we read it and we think it's important, we're going to test it. And then we're going to see results wise what we're going to do. So my protocol is different now than even what I did back then. What, back in 2004? 2005, I guess, at this point. And then different from even, a couple of years ago, because it's similar components, but it's gotten really honed down. But the most important components that people need to understand, there's two parts of it. There's, so in Goodbye Lupus, I have the 6 steps to healing with supermarket foods, right? And so the first 3 steps are really to stop getting sicker, And it's funny because I borrow that line from my husband, because one of my favorite moments when he would teach fat loss is he'll go, okay, I'm going to teach you the secret to rapid fat loss. And everyone's like, yes, that's why we paid the ticket, right? And they lean in and he goes, stop getting fatter. And I was like, oh, first step, right? First step is, right, we can give you the magical metabolism ingredients, but if you really want this to go quickly, stop getting sicker, right? Now, I do tell people, if you're really addicted to junk, then start with adding what you're missing, and you can crowd out the other stuff. But if you're eating meat and dairy and all the different oils and processed foods and sugars and all that stuff, you're creating inflammation and disease, right? Which gives your body more work to do when you're adding the ingredients that help you heal. So if you really want to get healthier, you got to consider it. But I don't start by pushing that on people who are stable, because I want to get them hooked on the good stuff. And if you tell people what they can't have, all they do is obsess about it.
True.
How can I live without Oreo cookies? Oh, they're singing songs, the Celine Dion's in their head. Like, just, so let's just focus on what you're missing. Eat so much of that you crowd that out. And then even when you eat it, you realize it feels like trash and you don't want it. But for people who are very sick, like I've published Reversing End-Stage Kidney Failure, getting people off the transplant list. I've gotten someone off a lung transplant list recently, that for most people now who come to me on their last resort, I guess nobody wants to eat raw vegetables. So they're like, I've tried everything else. I'll eat the vegetables, right? So a lot of people's last resort, which also tells us that, even in the sickest people, that their body wants to get better, right? And is willing to. We just ended a group on Friday, and we had a man come in who is in his 70s, and he has had a low immune system his whole life. He has lived with chronic shingles outbreaks, a few a month, and which is inside their internal shingles, very, very painful. And since being in the group now, he did 2 rounds because he was so much better after one, he didn't want to leave us yet. And for 6 weeks, he's had 0 shingles outbreaks. He has tons of energy. He feels really good for the first time in his life.
Wow.
For the first time in his life.
Incredible.
Like, can you imagine? And he said, you were my last resort. I've tried everything. I've tried every diet. I've tried every medicine. This is the first time I've ever felt healthy in my life.
See, it's never too late then, right? Yeah, it's
right?
never too late then for some people who might think it's too late, right?
Never. No, it's never too late to do everything you can to feel good. Like, how many times do you need to eat a burger to know what a burger tastes like? Would you like to know what healthy feels like? Better than a burger. I promise. Right. So yes, if people are very sick, then we make them give up everything that's going to make them sicker. We focus on hypernourishment, and then we go through the emotions with them of the withdrawal, because it's real. It's just like the work I used to do in drug addiction. The withdrawal, the mood changes, the anger, the despair, all of it. It is a real problem. And it's why people fail so often at changing their diet. And because of my specialty in understanding trauma and addiction and all that stuff, I can help people through that process in a way a lot of folks can't, because I know that process very well. But the part that you really want to focus on is getting what you're missing. If you want to have a fast metabolism that can lose fat when you do cardio and gain muscle when you are lifting heavy weights, and can build a healthy immune system and repair damage to cells, there's certain ingredients you have to have or that won't happen, right? Mm-hmm. So one of them is you need mega doses in vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients, antioxidants. And what we found is the highest source of those is cruciferous vegetables or dark leafies like spinach and chard, things like that. Not people's first choice, right? Cruciferous is like kale, broccoli, cauliflower, and uncooked, right? We've tested both. I wish cooked worked as well because people would like me more.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. But the raw works really well.
The raw works.
Yeah. And so, and we developed a protocol called hypernourishment, meaning we are intentionally overdosing you in the ingredients your body uses to repair itself, because guess what? You have about 100 trillion cells and they're all malnourished and sluggish, right? They're like, we're doing cardio, whatever. Yes, like, they're trying to sleep, right? So they need the nourishment, right? So, so we use high doses of the cruciferous and dark leafy greens. In order for it to be hypernourishment, you need to get at least 16 ounces a day or 454 grams to even qualify as an overdose. If you're getting less than that, good, that's nourishment. But what are you nourishing? Like the cells that you built today? Mm-hmm. Or do you want to get those old ones, right? So that's one. Omega-3 fatty acids. This one has been really, it's interesting because my husband became an expert in omega-3 fatty acid pathways really long time ago. He actually ran rounds at UCLA for the medical and family practice doctors to teach them this pathway, right? Because we didn't get taught it in medical school. And really about how to balance omega-6 and omega-3. And now that's like a hot thing. And I actually feel pretty proud of that's a topic being discussed now, because it wasn't being discussed at all back in the day. And we've really insisted on it being important. But even in the plant-based world, sometimes people really get cornered where you're either on team fat or no fat. And like, no, let's be on team healthy results, right? So there are fats that are very bad for you, saturated fats and all the different oils, palm oil, coconut oil, those things definitely cause inflammation. But omega-3 fatty acids like flax oil speeds up recovery, is good for your heart. Like it's been tested, right? So even in people who are eating plants, sometimes they find that their immune systems don't work well, or they don't go into full recovery. They can get into a remission, but if they eat one thing off plan, they feel sick. That's not full recovery, right? So omega-3s are essential. Again, for hypernourishment, about a half cup of flax or chia seeds a day will do it. For people who get bloated, then the flax oil works great. And that's like about 3 tablespoons or less. If you're just like getting started, even like a tablespoon, 1 or 2 will dramatically change your health.
And those are great for our mood. They're great for our brain and our mood too, right? Yeah.
100%. Okay. I have classes online and in Goodbye Lupus as well, where I talk about that pathway. And omega-3s are important for so many things. One would definitely be, yes, your neurons and your brain. So the primary fat that is supposed to be in the membranes of your neurons and your brain is omega-3 fatty acids, but your body can't make them. So if you don't eat them, you're using something else, a substitute. You're using that yellow Lego when you needed the clear one. Like I was trying to make my son do, and he's like, it won't be the same. It won't.
And what about algae? What about algae for that?
Well, algae is a good source of omega-3. Here's the problem with it. I mean, it's the reason why fish have omega-3 in them is because they eat algae, right? So we can skip the fish and go to the algae. Getting the algae in adequate amounts and untampered with. So here's the problem. Most algae supplements are very expensive and you get like a dropper bottle. For hypernourishment, it won't be enough. You'll be using a bottle every couple of days. And that's a lot.
I've noticed that with myself. Yeah. Okay.
Flax, chia seeds, flax oil is pretty cheap comparatively.
True.
The other problem is that because of the omega-3 fats in the algae, they want to dissolve it in another oil to make their serum. And for some reason, most brands choose sunflower oil or safflower oil, which are some of the highest omega-6 oils there is. So if you're taking omega-3s to try to fix your balance of 3 to 6, and you're drinking algae oil that's dissolved in sunflower oil, it's not going to work. So you're spending all this money on something that doesn't work.
Okay.
And again, I can't stand things that don't work. For me, it's got to work. So the fact that flax and chia seeds are cheap, readily available, and they work really well, there's just nothing better. Now, if you have an allergy and you want to use algae oil instead, you're gonna have to really check ingredients to make sure that if it's dissolved in any other oil, it's something like olive oil, which is an omega-9, which is not involved in the inflammatory pathway, versus, it's not ideal, but it's better than sunflower oil, safflower oil. And so yeah, your brain health is the building block of your anti-inflammatory immune system. So our inflammatory immune system is built off omega-6, which you also need to eat, but it's in everything. It's in plants, it's in oils, it's in high levels in meat and eggs and dairy. So most people have tons of omega-6. Their brain's built on omega-6. Their other cells are all built with omega-6, and they're sluggish and their metabolism is slow. So what we do is we flood them with omega-3 to try to replace as many of those ingredients in the different cells as possible. And that's why metabolism goes up so quickly. Your body will switch those out if they're available. So it's just, there's so many ways. I mean, you want rapid fat loss, you want a higher IQ. Oh my God, they did studies showing that pregnant women who take omega-3s, their kids have higher IQs. Wow, I remember my OBGYN was warning me. She's like, you're taking too much. Your kids are going to be unrelatably smart.
I love it. Yeah. No, I believe it. And you know what? Flax oil is good just even on salad. Do you think it's healthy if I just consume it like that? Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. Like for me, I've been off the oil so long that I actually don't like the taste of oil on a salad. But for so many of my clients, they love it because they want that vinaigrette with the oil. And they use that instead, and it's absolutely fine. There's no upper limit. My husband tested it actually when he had his boot camps. He used to have everyone on the same. He was computer science background. He created a patented system where everybody heard the same instructions at the same time, and so he could walk around and do all the adjustments and everything. And that way, all of his boot camp locations were all the same. So the exercise was the same. And then he created, and then he would do different nutrition plans to test them. Yeah. And so he tested omega-3s to see, well, if they raise metabolic rate, then what's the upper limit? When do we stop getting results? And what he found is there's no upper limit. That he had people on thousands of calories of omega-3 oils, and they just lost fat faster and faster, which proves that you don't gain fat from eating fat, you gain fat from certain fats, right? But omega-3 stimulate fat loss. Your metabolism gets so fast that when you do that cardio, that boot camp exercise, that fat loss just happens, right? The upper limit he found is people's own guts. At some point, they're like, I'm going to throw up if you make me drink one more tablespoon of that. Okay. Or I'm running to the bathroom with diarrhea because of the oil, right? Okay. So
and if some people don't like to drink it like that, you have smoothie recipes that you suggest, right? For people to get in all this nutrition who don't want to consume just the oils or all the kale or stuff like that or whatever.
Yes. And that really has been a saving grace because when I first did this, I just ate it. I was eating a couple pounds of broccoli and cauliflower a day, just dipped in guacamole. Guacamole, I can eat anything. Give me guacamole, right? And then when I tried making people do it or asking people to try this for free, when I was trying to get my data, it was really hard to convince people to eat all the vegetables. And then we came up with a smoothie solution. And we have a free website, smoothieshred.com, where my husband created it as a public service so that people could have videos and recipes and all that stuff. And we found that if you can put the leafy greens into the blender, then you can add a handful of flax or chia to get started, more if you need it. And then hydration is a very important part of recovery. You need high hydration. Well, you put water in there. And then in the remaining 25% of the blender, you put in fruit for flavor. People will do it. And so that really just shot us into the out of the atmosphere with people really being willing to follow a plan and get results all over the world. Is like, oh my God, I can drink my way to healthy, make a blender and all day long drink out of this, have a little bit more water, eat something else for dinner, whatever. And people have been able to get incredible results. We have a Facebook page that's also a free group. If you go to smoothieshred.com, there's an option if you want to join our Facebook group. There are people from all over the world that we don't know most of them, unless they happen to work with us, but who are all encouraging each other on our program. And every day people post results. I mean, thyroid eye disease going away, Hashimoto's going away, allergies going away, lupus going away, rashes going away. It's and they're just sharing it on their own. They're just encouraging each other, just following our free content without our help.
Amazing. And is there a smoothie that's most popular or your favorite smoothie for reversing things and health?
I think the ones that we've done the most over the years that we've just been our go-to. So one has been, so these are on Smoothie Shred, but one is, so we use Power Greens from Costco because there's now a lot of us in the house and we all do smoothies every day. So the Power Greens at Costco, you get a 24-ounce bag, it's 1.5 pounds, right? Or 680 grams of international folks, right? So that it's a huge bag. So we get all of our bags from Costco. So we've been using those for years. So we use the Power Greens and then frozen pineapple, frozen mango, and then super ripe bananas, either fresh or frozen, depending on what we have. Always delicious. I love the tang of the pineapple. The other one, my kid's favorite, frozen cherries with ripe bananas with the same greens. And then, flax or chia, whichever's on sale is what we use,
Okay.
So, but yeah, those flavor combos, for some reason, frozen cherries mixed with ripe bananas taste like chocolate. And if you add a spoonful of cacao, totally chocolate. So ever since my mom realized that, she like sticks with the cherry banana ones and reversed her rheumatoid arthritis. So, hey.
Amazing. And I thought, okay, I think I've heard you say that you've seen people don't reverse as much if their fruit intake is higher. Is that true?
Yeah, well, so there's different levels to this, right? For some people, just adding what they're missing is enough, especially if they're already eating a diet that's fairly not inflammatory. So there's some folks who are like, oh, I feel better, but I still got problems. They add in the smoothies and it goes away, right? When we've done our most aggressive protocol, so in my rapid recovery programs, we don't mess around. My group is 42 days. And if you do it privately with me, that's 28 days to change your life and your health forever. That's not a lot of time, right? And so we take out everything except the ingredients that heal people. And so we're focusing on the smoothies and salads and raw foods and things, high amounts of help with their happiness and their sleep and everything. It is cool because in my last group, people said that was the best part of the whole thing, was forgiving people their past and really knowing what true happiness feels like, feeling at peace for the first time. People made major changes in their life. One person decided to leave her husband, who she realized was emotionally abusive and was going to hinder her health. Somebody else asked for a promotion for the first time, and she got the highest level of promotion she never would have asked for before, because we taught her how to feel true confidence in herself and love herself, right? So those breakthroughs often even dwarf the fact that they don't have pain anymore. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But so in those protocols, we're very strict on the nutrition, including the fruit ratios. So what we found is to get those rapid results, that's what we're known for now, is rapid recovery. Like, how is someone who's been sick their whole lifetime in 6 weeks or less not have symptoms, right? It seems outrageous, and yet it's normal. In our final group meeting, every person who came on had results, and most of them didn't even have any symptoms anymore. That's just not something you see in any medical treatments normally, right? So what we found doing that program is that the fruit level matters. So once we get past 25% of the diet coming from fruit, it slows down the whole thing.
Wow.
Why? I don't know yet. And I'm not really interested in pursuing that because I'm so focused on results. I have theories about it. Maybe if you're eating more fruit, you're eating less of those, but I've seen people who could eat high amounts of greens and do the fruit. For some reason, it's a kind of a magical ratio where if 75% of the diet is coming from these high nutrient vegetables, that the body kicks into this recovery mode that's just unmatched. Some people get away with it, but when I'm teaching, I never teach for the outliers. I'm teaching for what consistently works. And what consistently works is it being mostly vegetables. Once you get your results, have as much fruit as you want. It's not bad for you. Have as much fruit as you want. That's fine.
What do you think about some people who are fruitarian who just do only fruit for 10, 20 years? Is that something, what do you think about that?
If it's working for you, hallelujah.
Yeah.
I'm not here to argue with anybody. If someone's doing something, even when people come on my page,
that's what I think.
Paleo and my arthritis is better. I'm like, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm not on a team. I'm not in a cult.
Me too.
I'm not, I'm just trying to help people. If something's working for you, I'm so glad. Your body's way more resilient than mine was.
Me
right.
too.
The moment when I first got better and I didn't know why, I at first added eggs back, and then I developed terrible inflammatory bladder problem. So the lupus was still quiet, but now I felt like I had a UTI permanently. It's called cystitis. Got rid of the eggs and it went away. And I was like, what the heck? But I didn't know yet because we hadn't studied it yet. We hadn't realized that we had a protocol yet, right? So I'm for what works. So if you're feeling great, that's wonderful. Although even the fruitarians I know, they still eat some greens and things. They just eat primarily fruit.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not just only eating fruit.
Yeah. Okay, great. So what do you think an ideal day looks like, morning to night, for somebody eating healthy, ideally? And how do you eat right now? I know a lot of my viewers were asking what you're currently eating in a day too.
What is she doing?
What's she doing to be this amazing? Tell us.
It's not that exciting. We're actually really boring. We usually eat the same thing every day, which is always why it's funny to me when people are like, we need more recipes. I'm like, I don't know why. Listen, my husband and I are very busy. So whatever makes life simple in terms of nutrition is best. And kids tend to prefer the same stuff. Most kids are not super adventurous around food. My kids have become adventurous now. They have recently learned that they like curry and spices. that they were afraid
Wow.
of when they were younger. Yeah, it's made things more fun. But kids tend to be kind of creatures of habit too. Like they have their favorite things. So we don't need to be chefs, right? I do finally have, I've been working for years now on a recovery recipe book that's not just smoothies, that actually has recipes that would count as hypernourishment. But I'm always like, whatever people are asking if it's ready yet, I'm like, you can just heal with the smoothie. So you don't need to have like a fancy salad. You could, I don't know. So we're simple is what I'm saying. So every day we start with our smoothies. We have 2 Vitamix blenders. And so the kids too, they have had a smoothie for breakfast their whole life. It used to be in their bottles, and now it's in their cups. So we all start out with our smoothies. The kids usually, after they finish their smoothie, will have like Ezekiel bread with avocado. They're growing now and their appetites are more and more, right? I'm usually just doing smoothies all day while I'm working, because I can drink and I can work. It'd be really awkward right now if I was chewing on broccoli, but I could take a sip out of a smoothie cup, then no problem, right? So I usually do smoothies the whole time I'm working. If I have a break long enough to get a snack, then I'll also do like Ezekiel bread with avocado. It's easy and it's avocado, or I might grab some veggies and dip it in avocado, something like that. And then at dinner time, every night, really boring, same thing, huge salad. Like salad is the main course. And you know, most American families, salad's like this little thing on the side. In our family, it is the main course, and it's big. I mean, our salad bowl is like this thing, like you have to like carry it like this, you know, it's giant. And so that's the main course. And then always we have an Instapot with soup in it. And again, simple, put in vegetable broth, usually a little bit of tomato sauce, potatoes, quinoa, tofu, maybe some celery, carrots or something. And you hit the button that says soup. We put that in around 3 o'clock. So by the time the kids get home, whoever wants soup, they have it. So for me, I prefer raw eating. I feel best on it. I love the energy of it. You can see I have like a manic energy. It's just my natural way. I'm not manic. But I love that feeling. When I eat cooked food, suddenly I'm like, I guess we can watch Netflix. You know, like I suddenly am like, ugh, like there's a different energy in it. So I will have, you know, some of that soup, but usually my salad is my main course. And then once I get to, oh, let's see. Thank you, Mom. She brought me my smoothie. See?
Yay. I love it.
Best mom ever. So, so when, when I'm done my smoothies for the day, I go and I have my salad, and I usually eat salad till I'm full. And then maybe an hour later or so, I might have some soup if I feel like it, or I might have more salad. But it's just like a small part of my day. So I'm like 75, 80% raw for the most part. Most of my family's about that. My kids now, growing boys, it's crazy. Like Solomon's like up to hear me now, and I'm 5'9". I'm like, oh. So he's now eating like 4 bowls of soup after his salad.
Wow.
I don't even know where it's going. It's just, yeah. So it's only going to height. He's built like me. It's only height. He's like height. But my younger one, you can't say he's skinny from being plant-based, because my younger son, he's a speed skater. And he looks like his dad. He is yoked out with muscles that he doesn't even deserve. Like, I don't even know. He's not lifting any weights. His shoulders, like he's just, so, but he, you know, he's always eaten more than Solomon until right now. Solomon's now in this spurt, but they're both genetically have slightly different builds to them on the same foods and can do different things. Solomon's sport is speed cubing, so he's long and lean. And Alex's sport is speed skating, and those, like, he's the fastest one on takeoff because his legs are so powerful, right? So whatever it is their bodies ask of them, they have the metabolism to be able to produce it and be successful at it, as well as being brainiacs. I mean, they skipped grades and, you know, 100% on Texas standardized testing. My son Solomon 100% in math. You know, Alex skipped kindergarten. Like they both were reading before 3. Like they're just, so whenever people say, because I say this not as a braggy mom, okay, but I was recently on a Fox show with a doctor who teaches keto, trying to say that I'm going to give my kids brain damage by not giving them meat, and I'm like, no,
I don't think so.
No.
It's funny. I just interviewed Rick Lambert. He's a 93-year-old raw vegan, and his son went to college when he was 9. And he said he was just brilliant. 9 years old. I had to say 9 over and over to make sure. And he was like 9 years old.
At 9. Yeah. And it was interesting because I was talking to folks who do brain research, and the 𝙎𝘼𝙈 thing. I was like, I remember the name. We were having dinner once, and their kids are brilliant. Their daughter went to college as a teenager too. And they found that for Alzheimer's, that I asked them what foods are the most likely to trigger Alzheimer's, and they said chicken and eggs. And I'm like, when people try to eat healthy, they eat chicken and eggs, right? And they said what they think, this is their theory, because we all have really brilliant kids. Now, obviously, we're all academic people, so, you know, but still our kids are way smarter than us. My kids are smarter than my husband and myself. And he said he thinks that if you raise a child on a healthy plant-based diet, you'll optimize their IQ.
Wow.
And I was like, that now makes sense. And so when you said that about the raw vegan, I'm like, that makes sense. My kids were completely raw their first year of life. It was green smoothies, breast milk, and then their first foods were avocado, bananas, things like that. And then we added tofu and then other things.
So did you supplement at all? And do you supplement for yourself, or do you ever eat animal products, or no, like B12
oh
or
God,
anything?
no, I will never, no. I would never eat another animal product. My kids have never had them. And so, yeah, that's, yeah, my son Solomon just published a book. His COVID project was his book, 50 Comebacks for Vegan Kids, because he wanted to help other vegan kids who maybe aren't raised with the knowledge that, I mean, he's raised with us, so he can come back to anything, you know, especially growing up vegan in public schools. But he wanted other kids to have that. And the funniest thing is he's got 5-star reviews on Amazon, but most of them are adults saying, I needed this. I carry this in my purse. So when people ask me, where do you get your protein? I'm like, what does Solomon say? All right, here we go. You know, B12, hold on. So the only supplements we take are B12 and vitamin D, which I put all my patients on, really, because it's been, you know, those are problematic for people. So I do test them to make sure, but most folks need those too.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, there's no nutrients in me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing to supplement coming off of it.
I take those, and the foods do so much. It was like me 10 years ago. I had so many health problems and no doctors could figure out what was going on. The 18th doctor was like, I think you have celiac. And I didn't know what that was. I was like 33, or I forget how old I was at the time. So I went home and I researched it, and then I removed gluten from my diet within 24 hours. It was like the brain fog left. I felt like a new person. And then after removing it, if I would have gluten, I would get so sick. I would be in bed for 5 days. I would be throwing up, everything coming out of me. It was like the worst hangover mixed with like the worst flu ever. And then after that, at some point, I went raw vegan 6 years ago. And then accidentally on a cooked cheat day in Miami with my friend, we had some vegan flatbread and I didn't realize it was gluten. And then I didn't get sick at all. No reaction. It was funny because time and time again, I would get so sick if I accidentally had gluten in the past, even if it was like used in like the wine, if I would drink wine, even if it was just used with the wine. And then, so the foods did a lot to heal that allergy for me, because that allergy was absolutely terrible.
And I've had people reverse celiac disease with my program. Be able to eat grains again. Yeah.
I mean, and you've seen people heal or reverse MS and all sorts of things. Like, what are maybe a couple of the most remarkable stories that come to mind that you've seen?
It's hard to even pick one because we work with so many people. So we've had 2 people in recent groups. I think this one's cool because there's not a treatment yet. We have 2 people now do our rapid recovery group for ALS who had positive results and regained function, which is like, so those we might actually have to take the time to publish, because most of the time I don't, because I have just the next group and the next group. And so I'm a clinician, you know, I'm not a researcher anymore, but those I might have to actually sit down with someone on that. But that was really exciting, because seeing those folks, it is the most heartbreaking disease and especially when doctors say there's no hope. So to see them regain function is really exciting. So that's new. MS, yes, we've had a lot of folks with MS. Some of them have made videos about it, like Sarah Ramos on my channel. If you look up multiple sclerosis, she's running 5Ks now when she was on the couch before. We had a recent person in our group who, you know, he was mostly in a wheelchair. He could barely stand up and then had to sit down. And on week 5, he showed us a video of him walking upstairs.
Wow, so amazing.
Yes. Now, of course, he needs physical therapy. I would say, like, he was shaky because those muscles haven't been used in forever. So, you know, you do need to get physical therapy, but the fact that those neurons were firing is unreal. Scleroderma, you know, we've had people with end-stage scleroderma reverse it, who literally their face has become a mask, you know, that they want wrinkles. You know, there's so many people in our culture who are trying to get rid of them and using Botox and things. They can't move their eyebrows. They can't smile. They can't open their mouths. And to be able to open your mouth again and to have wrinkles again. We had a client, she's like, I never thought I'd be excited to have wrinkles, but she could raise her eyebrows and she could smile and open her mouth, whereas before she had to use this. That changed her life. And people don't realize how devastating these diseases are, to be able to just want to be able to wrinkle your forehead or to open your mouth, right? Because they literally, it's like they're turning to stone, and we've successfully reversed it over and over again. We had someone with the same disease, they get ulcers in their fingertips and nothing will heal them. And we had someone in a recent group with scleroderma with those ulcers, and she was in a research study at the same time. And they said, if your nutrition works to reverse them, we're going to want to contact that person. She was the only person in the clinical trial whose ulcers went away, and they went away in 2 weeks because she was the only one on our diet. And then when she said, do you want the protocol? They said, no, we're good, but congratulations. So they're still
Wow.
testing their medicines, right?
Wow.
There's a video that in my classes, there's a video with someone with severe scleroderma, lupus, and Sjogren's, David, who had such bad scleroderma too, that when he bent his fingers, he split open his knuckles and then they wouldn't close again. And so he had infections in his bones. So painful to move at all. His mom would have to dress him. And within 2 weeks, those closed. But before he did my program, his doctor said the only way they could help him would be to amputate his fingers. And it has now been over 10 years. He has never had a relapse. And he is now an artist that has won competitions in galleries in Los Angeles for his beautiful 3-dimensional art from the same fingers that they were going to amputate.
That's amazing. What a
Yeah,
story.
I mean,
what a rewarding career you have, you know?
Oh my God. That's why when before this started, I said, how I'm grateful that I was sick. Like beyond grateful, because, for me, my work is not about getting rid of symptoms and normalizing labs. It's about giving people their lives back and giving them the ability to go after their dreams. My dream was to be a doctor and to save lives. That was my dream, right? I'm living it beyond everything I thought, because people are healing in a way that never would have been before through just medicines alone. But other people have dreams. David wanted to be an artist and he couldn't use his fingers, and now he's an artist, right? This woman who retired from her dream job because she couldn't go upstairs. Now she can go up and downstairs again, Kathy. And instead of having her longtime partner take care of her when she was disabled, they went married. And when they got married, and her and her wife went to the Grand Canyon and hiked for their honeymoon, right? Like in my classes, the case studies are just phenomenal, where you get to see them talk and see what their lives are like. That people go from a life of disability and loneliness and lack of passion and purpose to living their dreams, to giving their gifts. And I believe every one of us has a gift to give, and we have to have our health to give it. So yes, life is extraordinary, but mostly for me, because of the gift I'm able to give those people, and how much my own pain and illness has served to create so much healing in others.
Wow. Amazing. And what would you say has been the highlight of your career?
Oh my gosh. Well, the highlight of my life is my children, because I was told I could never be a mom.
Yeah.
And I think they will do things that are far more remarkable than me.
Wow.
And
I can tell you're an incredible mom.
Oh, I love those kids. I hang out with them every day. That's also why I like food to be simple, because I just want to go right into being with them. They are remarkable humans, and they give me so much joy. Growing old with my husband, that is a highlight that I'm really excited about, that I'm still here. And we're grateful for each other every day. Like literally, we wake up every day in tears if we look at each other for more than a few seconds, we both cry. We can't it's
wow, it's like a love story, it's like a movie.
My life is a love story, and we just support and admire each other so much every day. And there's just so much kindness and happiness there. And every day I get to wake up and look forward to my work. I hold people's hands when they're sick, and cry with them and understand them in a way that other people probably wouldn't. And then I get to celebrate them when they get better. And so I'm always in the moment. When you ask me the highlight of my career, it's like, I think I'm still in it. Like, I don't know that there's no pinnacle yet. It's really just about every life I touch and every person who gets better. It's another day of excitement. I mean, my mom lives here now, and I always give my clients and patients my cell phone number so that they can ask me questions if they're having a problem, or they can tell me good news. And I just posted on Instagram the other day a text chain from someone whose dream was to have a child, and with lupus, she told she couldn't do it. And she worked with me pregnant, and she had a healthy baby, and she hasn't had any relapse. She's not taking any medicines. She's breastfed her child, and her message said, thank you for giving me this dream. And I showed my mom, and we were both crying, and, she gave me permission to share it, obviously, but it's just those are the moments that are the highlights for me, is seeing people live their dreams and leave lupus and autoimmune disease behind. That's why it's goodbye lupus, goodbye autoimmune disease. It's about, embracing that life that you always wanted. So yeah, I feel like I'm not even at the pinnacle where I can look back and say, here was the highlight. I'm in it. I'm in the highlights.
Yeah. And you're definitely in your purpose. I can tell. And you're so genuine. And I feel like you have a lot of self-love. And I feel like people feel about us what we feel about ourselves. And I feel like that's why so many people love you. You are so loved. And I think that's because you have a lot of self-love. And you were just, I mean, blessed. You were raised so great. It almost makes me want to cry. You're so like genuine. I feel like connected to you even through the computer. It's not the same as in person, but do you have any tips for people out there how to have more self-love and how to not be a victim, especially if they're going through hard times? Because you went through the hardest of hard times and it would have been so easy to become a victim and just spiral and get bitter and angry and not be in this place you're at 46. So do you
Yeah.
have any advice for anybody out there who might be going through hard times to find that self-love and stay positive like you've done? Do you have a
Yes.
book on this? Because I know you
Yes.
have the
Goodbye
lupus book and
autoimmune
everything.
disease.
Do
So
you have
goodbye autoimmune disease is mostly about the emotional work, because goodbye lupus is short. It's like, here's my story. Here, eat this and you're good. And the reason why it's still a bestseller today, even though it was published in 2015, it really works. Okay. But then there's people who can't take that book and act on it, or not for long. And so goodbye autoimmune disease was actually, I took the coaching. One, there's dozens and dozens of case studies in other diseases, because people were saying, does it work for other diseases? Yeah, absolutely. Because it's specific for cellular repair, not disease. But the majority of it ended up coming from my heart, was from the coaching I do in my rapid recovery group. So most of the chapters are on the emotional issues that hold people back from healing. And I literally took videos of me coaching and turned them into chapters to help people who maybe couldn't work with me be able to do that work. And so one of the biggest things I teach people is that healing is an act of self-love. Absolutely. That you don't eat these raw vegetables because your body sucks and this is your final punishment. It's like, God, not only do I have to be sick and exhausted, but now I don't even get to eat good food, right? This is, for most people, the first time they've ever truly shown themselves love. For most people, they are the worst boss of their body, right? I'm going to malnourish you. I'm going to fill you with toxic things, drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, toxic food. I'm not going to let you sleep. I'm going to give you tons of stress. And then I'm going to expect you to work perfectly. Good luck, right? So when people do rapid recovery with me, it's the first time ever where they have to sleep, or we have a scoring system. And so all those people like good grades, they get all, right? Even if you ate perfectly, if you didn't get enough sleep, you don't pass for the day, right? If you didn't do self-care, you don't pass for the day. That's the biggest breakthrough for most people. What is doing something fun have to do with healing? Everything. And it's not just reading for 15 minutes or whatever. Like, we really challenge people to learn how to make fun and happiness a priority in their daily lives. My husband and I are good at it. We live for it, right? We are allergic to the negativity. As soon as a problem comes up, we're like, how do we solve this? So we can go right back to the happy. Like, we just want to solve it and move on. We don't want to sit and perseverate on negativity and stuff. And we just want to move past it. But for some folks, they stay there in the problems. And so one of the things we have people do is we make sure that they do that self-care every day that actually makes them happy. We check their moods. We'll be like, great idea for the self-care, but it didn't work because your mood's still a 4. So if you're meditating every day and your mood's a 4, guess what? Not working, because we're results oriented, right? And so we teach people this. And the other part is really about, like, you have to prioritize it. If you're going to get your self-care in, that means you are suddenly a priority. So if you're going to have all your food and you're not going to eat off plan and you're going to get enough sleep and you're going to do self-care, then you're learning how to prioritize yourself. And most people will not do that. And that's why they're sick to begin with. There's a reason why it's mostly like moms in my group, right? We do have men too, but a lot of them are women who've given everything of themselves and have no ability to understand, what do you mean self-care? I could clean the floor in that time that I was taking that bubble bath, so that is an important part of it, that you're not going to hate your body into healing, right? It's about true self-love. When you look at your smoothie, instead of saying like, oh, this is gross, this is whatever, you go, I always tell them, kiss it. Mwah, thank you, right? I love you. Like, how beautiful is it that there's something that's simple that can change my health, change my life? I'm sorry for what I did before, but I'm going to do better, right? And so it's truly learning that getting high on food is not the same as nourishment. You're an addict that is poisoning yourself rather than doing what it takes to get healthy. Just like when they did those horrible experiments on rats, where they'd rather hit the button for cocaine over eat and they die of starvation. Humans are doing that every day. They are hitting that dopamine button with processed foods and meat and dairy and junk, and they are starving. While obese, they are starving to death. That's where their diseases are coming from, right? So when you can truly understand that, there's a revolution that takes place, and it's a lot of work. So goodbye autoimmune, I tell them, if you're going to do the book, journal on each chapter. In my group, they get 3 or 4 videos from me a day, because I always tell them, I'm trying to download my brain into yours, right? And my videos will literally say, don't listen to your brain right now. Your brain right now is trying to talk you out of this, right? Listen to me. It's worth it. You can do this today. Let's talk about this, right? So it's a training. Learning how to love yourself for many people is a training, right? Yes, you're worthy of love, even if you have illness, right? It's one of those things too. It's why that woman was able to ask for a raise, right? And the other woman was willing to leave her husband, is they finally decided that their own happiness was worth something, that I'm allowed to be a visible person in the room. And how are you going to ask the waiter for something special or stand up to somebody who's saying just one bite won't hurt if you don't believe that you deserve better? You have to be willing to say, I'm allowed to take up space. I deserve my health. I'm allowed to eat what makes me feel good. I don't need to please anybody else through my own diet or how I take care of myself, right? It's a revolution in understanding your own value. And so it takes a lot of work. And, I'm very dedicated to it. It's why I said, people thought they were coming to my group for nutrition, and then they leave like, I'm a different person. There's a Gerard posted a video. He was a 74-year-old guy in my group. Now I forget, was he 74 or 77? Numbers never stick in my brain. My husband makes fun of me for that. But he's in his 70s with glaucoma, and on week 5 his glaucoma was gone.
Wow.
And yes, and he made a video and he said that was amazing. But the most amazing part is I was a grouchy old man in the beginning, and now I'm this happy guy.
Yeah.
And that's even better, right? Learning, like, even an older man can learn how to be loving and kind and present, and so it is a really important part. You teach people how to love you by how you love yourself. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. And if you treat yourself as a priority and you have good boundaries and you take good care of yourself, you're going to attract people who will do the same, right? And you'll be repulsed by people who don't. So yes, it is an important process of health, is really being willing to be different, right? And stand out. And we had a 15-year-old in my last group who, she had low platelets. That was her disease, normal platelets after the first couple of weeks. And she said, I'm the only one in my high school who eats like me, but it's all right. I'm cool being weird. That's all right.
Good.
I'll be weird, right?
Exactly.
And I always tell them, what's weird? Reversing an autoimmune disease. That's weird. So be weird like me. It's good to be weird. But again, you have to love yourself enough to be willing to be weird, to be different, and to honor what's good for you. So for most folks, that's going to be a daily process of work. I mean, you need a therapist. If you're not going to do something with me, then have a therapist, someone that you work with, to really be willing to take that step to say, I'm worth this. Because if you don't believe it, you won't do it.
And that can be great for those moments. I feel like your group can be great for those moments where, because people are used to maybe running away to alcohol or processed foods or toxic relationships, like your group can be great for that support, right? I'm healthy and I feel like joining your group, like it's so positive and amazing. And it's been so amazing talking to you. I think you're absolutely incredible. You're so magnetic, so full of life, such an inspiration to so many people worldwide. So thank you for coming on. And if you could let everybody know where they can find you, everybody go follow Brooke if you don't already. Go get her books. I will link them all down below. And I know my viewers had so many questions for you, but we don't have time today. But I'd love to have you back in the future, maybe to answer some of those. That would be awesome as well.
Sure. I told you, you said some people give short answers, some people will give long answers. I'm sorry. I get excited and then I keep talking. So yes, I'd love to do that. So to find me on social media, I'm at Goodbye Lupus. So you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook at Goodbye Lupus. And I'm posting stuff every day. A lot of it in this emotional rant part that we were just talking about, as well as, things about diet and nutrition as well. So Goodbye Lupus, my website's goodbyelupus.com. And the free website that has, like, goodbyelupus.com has free gifts and how to make smoothies and all that kind of stuff. And then smoothieshred.com has all the recipes and things as well. So we have lots of resources that you can list there for people that are for free, so that people can free or low cost things like the books. Although I will, on a regular basis, even put my classes online for free to, like, challenge people, like, today's the day, go learn it, to try to get people motivated and excited about it. But yes, I'm always happy to do that. And what I'm doing now is, it took me over 4 months to get this into my schedule, but now finally every Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific, I do live Q&As for the public, and it's live streamed across YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook at the same time.
Wow.
So every Wednesday for an hour, I come on and do Q&As with the public, and we have, like, every single area has hundreds of people come. And I answer questions. It's just a public service to try to help people who are trying to figure the things out on their own, as well. And I'm even starting to notice same faces, and, you get to know people's names, usernames. But if people have questions, they can always go there as well and ask me questions. It's every Wednesday.
That's cool. I didn't know you could go live on all the platforms like that. Look at that. That's cool.
Yeah, it takes a lot of phones and things.
Yeah, I bet it does. Well, you're awesome. And to the viewers, I hope you enjoyed this video. I truly hope you loved it and got some value from it. If you did, give it a big thumbs up right now, and make sure to subscribe for more great videos just like this one. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.